When I opened that apartment door, after his family left, I knew my life would never be the same again. What I discovered that day shattered everything I believed about my marriage. But let me take you back to the beginning, because what happened next was even worse than I could have imagined. My name is Ashley, I'm 32 years old, and I work as a senior logistics coordinator at a major international shipping company. I've been there for 8 years, starting as a basic dispatcher and working my way up through late nights, stressful calls with suppliers across 12 time zones, and more customs paperwork than any human should have to deal with. My salary is $6,500 a month, plus quarterly bonuses that sometimes reach $3,000. It's good money, money I earned through dealing with container shipments stuck at ports, incorrect documentation, and suppliers who miss deadlines. I'm good at what I do. My boss Victor stopped being surprised by my ability to fix impossible situations years ago. The alarm went off at 6:00 a.m. that Thursday morning. Still dark outside, but I never liked rushing in the mornings. I slipped out of bed quietly so I wouldn't wake Derek, pulled on my robe, and padded to the bathroom. Cold water on my face chased away the last bits of sleep. I looked at myself in the mirror. Tired eyes. But that was normal for a Thursday. 4 more hours until the weekend planning would start. In the kitchen, I started the coffee machine and pulled ingredients from the fridge. Cooking was my way of unwinding after brutal days of phone calls and negotiations. While my hands chopped vegetables or kneaded dough, my mind could finally rest from the endless emails and crisis management. On weekends, I'd spend 5 hours in the kitchen, experimenting with new recipes, and it brought me genuine peace. That morning, I made cheese omelets with fresh herbs, sliced avocado, and toasted sourdough bread. The coffee was strong and dark, exactly how I needed it. Derek stumbled into the kitchen around 7, hair sticking up, still half asleep. He worked as a project engineer at a construction company, making $4,200 a month, stable income, respectable job. We'd been married for 5 years, and from day one I'd made my position clear. No traditional gender roles. I wasn't going to be a housewife. Derek had agreed without argument, even seemed surprised I brought it up. But somehow, life had arranged itself so that I handled everything at home. Not because I had to, but because I liked it. A clean, organized home calmed me. Cooking became a hobby. Derek never demanded it from me. He just accepted it as normal. Today's breakfast disappeared quickly as he scrolled through his phone, barely looking up. I finished my coffee, watching him. He seemed distracted lately, but I didn't pry. Everyone has their own thoughts. After breakfast, Derek left first. He had a 9:00 a.m. meeting. I stayed another half hour, washed dishes, wiped down the counters, loaded the washing machine. Everything on autopilot, quick and stress-free. Then I grabbed my bag and headed to work. The office day flew by in its usual chaos. A Chinese supplier delayed a shipment of components. I had to find an alternate delivery route through Kazakhstan. 3 video calls, dozens of emails, customs broker negotiations. By lunch the problem was solved. Victor just nodded approvingly. He'd long stopped being amazed at my ability to untangle disasters. That evening, I stopped at the big supermarket near our apartment. Tomorrow was Saturday, which meant Derek's family would be coming over. This had been our established ritual for the past 3 years. It started when Derek's brother Tyler and his wife Amanda had their 3rd child. Tyler was 38, Amanda 34. The kids came one after another, 2 years apart. Now the boys were 10 and 8. The girl was 4. Amanda looked exhausted, running after 3 kids nonstop while Tyler constantly worked overtime. Derek's mother, Barbara, had suggested back then that we all gather at our place every Saturday. Our apartment was more spacious, she said, and I was such a good cook. Let Amanda have at least 1 day a week free from kitchen duties. I hadn't objected. I enjoyed cooking for a crowd, seeing satisfied faces, hearing compliments. I filled the shopping cart completely. 2 whole chickens for roasting, 2 pounds of beef for roulades, fresh vegetables of 3 varieties. bundles of herbs, heavy cream, 3 types of cheese, premium flour for homemade pasta, then fruits, apples, pears, grapes, berries for dessert, raspberries and blackberries, chocolate for glazing, sour cream, eggs, milk. At checkout, the total flashed. $620 I paid with my card, took the receipt, and slipped it into a separate pocket of my wallet. I had a habit of saving all receipts and updating my expense spreadsheet monthly. Not because I was cheap, I just liked knowing where money went. It gave me a sense of control. At home, Derek was already on the couch with his laptop. I hauled the heavy bags into the kitchen and started unpacking. He poked his head in, scanned the abundance on the counter. "Your parents coming tomorrow?" "Yeah, and Tyler with Amanda and the kids." "You bought a lot." "There's 7 of them, plus us. Plus they usually take leftovers home for the week." Derek nodded and returned to his laptop. I methodically arranged products on shelves, mentally planning tomorrow's cooking schedule. First I'd put the chickens in to roast. They'd need 2 hours in the oven. While they cooked, I'd work on the beef roulades, then salads, pasta, dessert. Saturday started early. By 8:11 a.m. I was in the kitchen wearing my apron, breaking down the chickens. I turned on soft jazz to help me focus, poured myself a large mug of coffee, and dove into the process. I stuffed the chickens with a mixture of mushrooms, onions, cheese, and dill, rubbed them with a spice and sour cream blend, wrapped them in foil, and slid them into the oven. While the birds roasted, I tackled the beef. The meat needed to be pounded thin, salted, layered with sautéed mushrooms and onions, rolled tight, and tied with kitchen twine. My hands remembered every movement. I worked quickly and precisely. Derek woke around 11, shuffled into the kitchen in wrinkled sweats and a t-shirt. 3 pots were already bubbling on the stove. Roulades were in the oven. The counter was piled with chopped vegetables for salads. The smell was incredible. "Need help with anything? You can set the table in the dining room. Fresh tablecloth is in the top cabinet." He obediently went to get dishes and silverware. I was whipping cream for dessert, planning to make a berry tart with custard filling. The doorbell rang just as I was decorating the tart with fresh raspberries. The clock showed exactly 1 p.m. The relatives always arrived right on time. Barbara entered first. She was 58, solidly built with short hair and a perpetually dissatisfied expression. In her hands was a large bag. I knew it contained empty containers for food. Tyler followed, tall and thin, looking exhausted. Behind him came Amanda, a pale woman with dark circles under her eyes, and 3 kids. The boys immediately ran to the room with toys. The little girl clung to her mother's skirt. I brought out platters and started arranging them on the table. Roasted chickens with golden crispy skin, juices running out. 3 beef roulades sliced into beautiful portions. Fresh vegetable salad with goat cheese. Vinaigrette. Greek salad. Homemade pasta in fragrant chicken broth with herbs. Freshly baked bread still warm. A vegetable platter. For dessert, the berry tart that looked almost too beautiful to eat. Barbara walked around the table, examining everything critically. "Not bad. You did well. The chicken looks nice and golden, though I think the roulade could have been sliced thinner. And the pasta's a bit wide, but overall, edible." I smiled silently. My mother-in-law always found something to criticize. That was her thing. First give stingy praise, then add criticism. It used to not bother me. Today, for some reason, it stung. Lunch was loud and long. The boys ran between rooms, had to be called to the table 10 times. The little girl fussed, refusing to eat anything but bread. The adults ate and talked about their lives. Tyler complained about work problems, management demanding the impossible, deadlines burning, team can't keep up. Amanda quietly shared another conflict with the daycare teacher, who in her opinion didn't watch the kids properly. Barbara lamented that her pension was laughable, $1,400 a month, you can't live on that, prices rising every day. Derek mostly stayed quiet. occasionally adding neutral comments. I sat quietly too, observing. I liked watching people eat my food. But today, the pleasure wasn't as complete as usual. After the meal, when everyone was stuffed and leaning back in their chairs, Barbara pulled out her containers from the bag as always. Big plastic storage containers of various sizes. She methodically started packing leftovers. Half a chicken in one container, all 3 roulades in another. All the vinaigrette, half the Greek salad, leftover pasta with broth, all the bread. I silently watched as the food I'd spent 5 hours and $620 making was being packaged up to leave. Before, this had seemed normal. Why let food go to waste? Better the relatives take it. They have 3 kids, they'll have something to feed them during the week. But today, watching my mother-in-law stuff containers to the brim, I suddenly felt mild irritation. Maybe because of that comment about the pasta, or the remark about the roulades, or maybe it had just accumulated over 3 years. The relatives left around 6 p.m. Derek helped clear the table and load the dishwasher. I wiped down the counters, put away the few remaining food items in the fridge. Very little left, just enough for our dinner. That evening, after everything was cleaned and I could finally relax, I sat down at my computer and opened the expense spreadsheet I'd been keeping for years. It was a habit from college, when money was tight and I had to carefully track every purchase. I entered today's groceries. Then, out of curiosity, I opened tabs from previous months and started reviewing amounts spent on Saturday dinners. $48, $560, $561.68. The numbers blurred before my eyes. I opened the calculator and started adding. For the past year, it came to $26, $200. Just on Saturday dinners for Derek's family. I leaned back in my chair staring at the screen. Over $26,000. Not counting regular groceries for the 2 of us. Utilities, cleaning supplies, clothes, gifts for relatives on birthdays and holidays. I'd never specifically calculated how much I spent on Derek's relatives before. I just bought groceries, cooked, enjoyed the process. But now, seeing this amount in black and white, something shifted inside. I didn't feel angry or hurt. I rarely got angry. It was inefficient and drained energy. But a strange sensation appeared that the balance was off. I was investing money, time, energy, and in return getting comments that the pasta was too wide. Still, these were just thoughts. I closed the spreadsheet, stretched, worked out the kinks in my stiff back, stood up, and went to make a light dinner for Derek and myself. Vegetable stew with pieces of chicken left over from lunch. Derek was in the living room watching football. I joined him with a cup of herbal tea. The day had passed like any other. Nothing special had happened. The following week, I noticed Derek had become distracted. In the evenings he'd come home from work, eat dinner silently, then sit with his phone reading something for a long time, frowning. I didn't pay much attention. Everyone has their own business and thoughts. Wednesday evening, as we sat at dinner, Derek suddenly spoke up. "Listen, Marcus told me something interesting today." "Marcus? Who's that?" "New coworker. He transferred to our department a month ago. Divorced." "Around 4." I nodded, continuing to eat my salad. "What did he tell you?" "About his divorce. Says his wife sued for half the apartment in the settlement. Even though she hadn't worked in 5 years, just stayed home, even tried to get alimony for herself. For herself, not the kids. They don't have kids. That happens." So he says the main problem was that they had joint finances. All the money went into one pot. And in the divorce, the court decided she had a right to half, even though only he was earning. I looked up from my plate at my husband. "Why's he telling you all this?" "Just sharing his experience." Says if they'd had separate finances, the divorce would have been simpler. Each person with their own money. No claims. I see. He actually thinks modern couples are better off keeping separate finances. Each person responsible for themselves, knows how much they're spending, and on what. No control, No arguments. I silently finished my salad, wiped my lips with a napkin. Derek, if you want to tell me something, say it directly without these let-ins about your coworker. No, I'm just thinking out loud. Fine. I stood, took my plate, and carried it to the kitchen. If he wasn't ready to speak directly, I wasn't going to drag words out of him. I didn't like hints and implications. If he wants to say something, let him say it. If not, his business. The next day, Thursday, Derek came home from work distracted again. I was cooking dinner, baking salmon with lemon and rosemary. He sat at the kitchen table with his phone, reading something, frowning. I glanced at his screen as I passed. Some article about financial independence in marriage. I said nothing, kept cooking. After dinner, Derek went to the living room. I stayed to wash dishes. Through the window I could see him sitting on the couch with his laptop, typing something in the search bar. I understood my husband was working towards something. Some idea was forming in his head, and soon he'd voice it, but I wasn't going to rush things. Let him reach his own conclusion and express it. Friday passed calmly. I stayed late at work, had to close the monthly report for the head office in New York. Got home around 10 p.m., exhausted. Derek reheated leftover casserole for me. We ate silently in front of the TV, and went to bed early. Saturday morning started again, with preparation for the relatives' arrival. I got up at 8, drank coffee, and drove to the farmer's market for fresh fish. Decided to make baked trout. I'd been wanting to try a new recipe with cream sauce and capers. At the market, I walked between stalls, selecting the freshest fish. Trout was expensive, $18 per pound. I bought 4 pounds. Also got vegetables, herbs, cheese, cream. Spent 5 days. At home I started working magic in the kitchen. The trout needed to be cleaned, gutted, stuffed with lemon slices and dill sprigs. Make a sauce from cream, white wine, capers and garlic. Bake the fish in the oven, periodically basting with sauce. I also made a meat and potato casserole with mushrooms, 3 types of salads, homemade lemonade from fresh lemons with mint. By 1 p.m., the table was set. The relatives arrived on time. Barbara immediately went to the kitchen. Sniffed. Smells like fish. You made trout? Yes. Expensive, I bet. I didn't answer. Kept arranging salads in beautiful serving bowls. My mother-in-law stood there, then went to the dining room. Lunch started as usual. Everyone ate, praised the fish. The trout really turned out excellent. Tender, juicy, with a delicate creamy flavor. The kids devoured it. Amanda asked for the recipe. Tyler ate silently but looked pleased. Barbara did note that the sauce could have been thicker and I'd put too much lemon in the glasses, but that had become tradition. My mother-in-law couldn't exist without a spoonful of criticism. I listened and thought about how I'd spent nearly $535 on this dinner and 5 hours of time, and in return was getting comments about sauce thickness. When everyone finished dessert, Barbara reached into her bag for containers, but before she started packing food, she suddenly turned to me. Ashley, do you know that modern couples often switch to separate finances these days? I had been collecting empty plates, stopped, looked at my mother-in-law attentively. Separate finances? Well, yes, that's when each person manages their own money. Very convenient, actually. Convenient for whom? For both. You see, when people have joint finances, conflicts often arise. One spends more, the other less. Claims start. But with separate finances, each person is responsible for themselves. No arguments. I slowly set the stack of plates on the table. Where did you read about this? Online? There are lots of articles now about financial independence in marriage. I sent one to Derek. He read it. Right, son? Derek, sitting at the other end of the table, turned red and nodded. I smiled silently. Inside, everything became very cold and clear. I instantly understood the whole picture. Barbara had planted the idea in Derek's head. He'd been mulling it over, consulting with his divorced coworker, reading articles, and now my mother-in-law decided to voice this topic in front of everyone to push things along. I see, was all I said. Barbara, encouraged that her daughter-in-law wasn't objecting, continued. I read a very sensible article. It said that joint finances are a relic of the past. Before, women didn't work, stayed home, so they put all money in a common pot. But now, everyone works. So each person should be financially independent. Modern approach, you understand? Very modern, I agreed. My mother-in-law clearly expected more enthusiasm, but decided not to stop. You work too, Ashley. You earn money, so why don't you and Derek try it? Each person spends their money on themselves. Nobody has to account to anyone. Freedom, right? I nodded, picked up the plates, and carried them to the kitchen. Behind me, I heard Barbara contentedly starting to pack food into containers. Half the trout, the entire casserole, 2 of 3 salads, all the lemonade. Standard weekly supply for Tyler's family. The relatives left by evening. Derek silently cleared the table. I silently loaded the dishwasher. We didn't talk. Each was occupied with their own thoughts. When the kitchen was back in order, I went to the bedroom, sat at my computer, and opened the folder with financial documents. I pulled out all receipts from the past year from the box on the shelf, spread them before me, opened the banking app, downloaded all card statements, sat down to calculate. Saturday dinners for Derek's relatives, $26 and $200 per year. Pure cost of groceries. Regular groceries for the 2 of us daily. About $1,400 per month. Per year, that's 16. Utilities, about $465 per month. Per year, $180 should be split in half. Really, $2,790 each. Household supplies, cleaning products, various household items, laundry detergent, dish soap, toilet paper, soap, shampoos, about $2,075 per month, per year. Clothing. I dressed modestly but with quality. Bought items rarely, but to last. Per year I spent about $5,000. Gifts for relatives. Barbara's birthday, we usually gave something around $275. Tyler's birthday, $275. Amanda, $165. 3 kids at $110 each. That's $30. Christmas, another gift for everyone. $25 for all. Derek's father's birthday, $275. My father, $275. Mother's Day for both moms and Amanda. Another $555. Total about $3,850 per year. I created a detailed spreadsheet, broke everything down by category, entered the amounts. Then I looked at the total. From my monthly salary of $6,500, nearly everything went to general family needs. About $550, 80-25 remained for personal expenses. Cafes with friends, cosmetics, little things for myself. Derek, from his $4.20, contributed to the family budget, only about $2,200. Half utilities, $233. Sometimes, when I asked, he'd give money for groceries, about $1,100. Occasionally he'd pay for large purchases like a new microwave or vacuum, but that was maybe once a year. The remaining $2,000 per month he spent on himself, on gadgets he loved. Every 6 months, a new phone or smartwatch. On Friday nights with friends, they'd meet at a bar, drink beer, watch football. Such an evening cost about $85. On helping his mother, who regularly asked for money, for medication, for balcony repairs, or just because her pension ran out before the month ended. I saved the spreadsheet, closed the laptop, stood, stretched, walked to the kitchen, made myself mint tea, sat by the window, looking at the evening city lights. Separate finances. Modern approach. Each person for themselves. Interesting idea. Especially interesting would be seeing how long Derek would last if I actually agreed to this scheme. I smirked, taking a sip of tea. I wasn't angry or offended. I simply understood that an amusing experiment was about to begin, and the results of this experiment would be very revealing. The following week, Derek walked around even more distracted. Several times he started to say something, then changed his mind. I watched him with curiosity, like a scientist observing a subject about to take an important action. Tuesday evening, he brought up his coworker, Marcus, again. Imagine Marcus showed me an article today about financial independence between spouses. It was very well written, about how, when people have joint finances, often one starts to feel like they're being used. Like one person earns and spends on the family, and the other just takes advantage. I was chopping tomatoes for salad. Didn't look up from the cutting board. Do we have such feelings? Well, no, but theoretically we could. Theoretically, lots of things could happen. Practically, is something wrong? Derek fell silent. I could see he wanted to continue but didn't know how. I didn't help him. Let him formulate his own thoughts. Wednesday he came home earlier than usual. I wasn't back from work yet, stuck in a meeting with suppliers. When I arrived around 8 p.m., Derek was sitting on the couch with his laptop, clearly waiting for something. I made a quick dinner, sautéed shrimp with garlic, served with steamed rice. We ate silently. Then I went to shower. When I came out, Derek was still sitting on the couch, but without the laptop now, just sitting, kneading a pillow in his hands. Ashley, we really need to talk. I sat in the chair across from him, wrapped in my robe. My hair was still wet from the shower. I looked at my husband calmly and waited. You see, I've been thinking a lot lately about our life, about how we live, about money too. I stayed silent. And I think we should try changing something regarding our budget. What exactly? Derek swallowed, rubbed the bridge of his nose. I knew that gesture. He was nervous. I think we should switch to separate finances. It's more modern and right. Each person will be responsible for themselves. Spend their own money. You understand, it eliminates a lot of potential conflicts. Do we have conflicts about money? No, but we could in the future. I see. So you want to switch to separate finances to prevent conflicts that don't exist yet but theoretically might? Derek stammered. Well, basically, yes. Plus it gives freedom. Each person manages their money how they want. Nobody has to account to anyone. Did I ever demand an accounting from you? No. Then what's this freedom about? Derek was silent, then blurted out quickly, like he was afraid he'd change his mind. Honey, from this paycheck on, we're switching to separate finances. I'm tired of supporting you. Silence hung in the air. I looked at my husband, not changing my expression. Inside, I felt no hurt, no anger, no surprise, just cold understanding. There it was. Derek had voiced what he'd been working toward for weeks. I smiled slowly. Derek tensed, expecting an explosion. Great idea, I said calmly. What? I said great idea. I completely support your proposal. Derek was stunned. His eyes widened. You agree? Absolutely. Separate finances really is modern and right. Each person responsible for themselves, managing their own money. It's fair and just, right? Of course! Let's start tomorrow. Why delay? Derek sat with his mouth open. He'd clearly prepared for a fight. Tears, accusations. He'd rehearsed arguments, prepared responses, and he got instant, cheerful agreement. You're not against it? Why should I be against it? You're absolutely right. Each person should be financially independent. We'll start the new life tomorrow. I'm glad you suggested this. I stood, walked over to him, kissed his cheek. Good night, honey. I have to get up early tomorrow. I went to the bedroom, leaving Derek sitting on the couch in complete bewilderment. He didn't understand whether to be happy or alarmed. He definitely hadn't expected this reaction. I lay in bed, closed my eyes. Everything inside was calm and cold. Derek wanted separate finances. He'd get it in full, with all the consequences. Tomorrow, a new life would begin, and it would be very interesting. I wasn't angry. I'd never been one of those women who endure and cry. I was one of those who act coldly, calculatingly, and efficiently. And Derek would soon understand that he got exactly what he asked for, to the letter. Thursday began unusually. I woke at my usual time, 6:00 a.m., got up quietly, went to the bathroom, showered, returned to the bedroom, dressed in my work suit, carefully styled my hair. Derek was still asleep, sprawled across half the bed. In the kitchen, I started the coffee machine and pulled ingredients from the fridge, but not the usual ones for breakfast for two. Today, I was cooking only for myself. I cracked 3 eggs into a bowl, whisked them with milk and a pinch of salt, poured onto a heated pan. While the omelet cooked, I sliced avocado into thin pieces, laid them on whole grain toast, put smoked salmon on top that I'd specifically bought yesterday on the way home, squeezed juice from half a grapefruit, sat at the table with my plate, a cup of coffee and my tablet, checked work email, replied to a couple urgent messages, ate slowly, enjoying every bite. The avocado was perfectly ripe. The salmon melted in my mouth. Derek came downstairs to the kitchen around 7, stopped in the doorway staring at the table where only one plate, one cup sat. "Good morning." "Morning," I answered without looking up from the screen. Derek walked to the table, sat across from me, looked at my breakfast, then at the empty counter in front of him. "What about me?" I looked up, met his eyes calmly. "Make your own breakfast. Separate finances, remember? Separate food. I cook with my money for myself. You cook with your money for yourself. Logical, right? You're serious?" "Absolutely. You yourself suggested yesterday that each person be responsible for themselves. I'm making food with my money for myself. You make food with your money for yourself." Derek opened his mouth, closed it, stood, walked to the fridge, pulled open the door. Containers and products sat on the shelves. Each one had bright pink sticky notes with large letters. "Ashley, you labeled everything?" "Of course. These are my groceries, bought with my money. Separate finances require separate storage. You'll buy your own groceries." "When?" "Whenever you want. Right now if you have time, or after work. Whatever's convenient." "Ashley, are you kidding me?" "No, I'm following the rules you established last night. Separate finances means each person for themselves. Or did you mean something different?" Derek was silent, staring at me. I calmly finished my coffee, put the tablet in my bag, stood and carried my dishes to the sink. Washed my plate, cup, fork, dried them, put them away. "Have a good day," I said on my way out, and left the kitchen. Derek stood in the middle of the kitchen. He opened the fridge again, hopelessly looked at the stickers, pulled out a bottle of water that didn't have a sticker, poured himself a glass, drank it in one gulp, grabbed his jacket, and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door. I heard the slam sitting in my car in the parking lot, smirked, started the engine, and drove to work. The workday passed in its usual rhythm. Few problems. Everything resolved quickly. At lunch I went to a nice cafe near the office. Ordered a tiger shrimp salad and a glass of white wine. Spent $55 and didn't regret a penny. The food was excellent. After lunch I went into the banking app on my phone. Created a new savings account, named it Emergency Fund. Transferred $2,200 there. A third of my salary. This would be my personal safety cushion just in case. Derek didn't know about this account, and shouldn't. Separate finances, after all. That evening I stopped at the big supermarket, took a cart, and leisurely walked through the aisles, selecting groceries but not what I usually bought for the family. Today I only took what I personally loved. King prawns. Derek couldn't stand them, said they were rubbery. 2 pounds for $42. 5 perfectly ripe avocados. Derek called avocado tasteless grass and refused to eat it. Blue cheese, expensive French, 14 ounces for $44. Derek wrinkled his nose at the smell alone. Branzino filet, fresh and beautiful, $16 per pound. Took 2.5 pounds. Green asparagus, a bunch for $23. Fresh raspberries and blackberries in small containers, each $19. Belgian chocolate bars. 3 different varieties, each $22. Good white wine. A bottle for coffee capsules of my favorite variety. A pack for $50. Expensive cold-pressed olive oil for $39. Parmesan, a chunk for I also got fresh vegetables, herbs, fruits, good yogurt, mineral water in glass bottles. At checkout, the total was impressive, $430. I paid without hesitation. This was my money, and I was spending it on myself. As agreed. At home, Derek was already there, sitting on the couch with a grim face, staring at his phone. I walked past him to the kitchen with heavy bags. He didn't even stand to help. I started unpacking purchases. Shrimp and fish went into the freezer on the top shelf. I hadn't used before. Stuck bright Ashley stickers on the packages. Avocados, cheese, vegetables, berries in the fridge on a separate shelf. Also labeled everything. Chocolate, coffee capsules, expensive olive oil. I bought a small cabinet with shelves at a home goods store on the way. Assembled it right there in the kitchen. Set it in the corner, transferred products that didn't need refrigeration. Closed the door with a small padlock. Hung the key around my neck on a thin chain. Derek walked into the kitchen at that moment, saw the cabinet with a lock, stared at it. What the hell is that? Cabinet for my groceries, so nobody accidentally eats someone else's food. You put a lock on it? Seriously? Separate finances require clear separation. I don't want misunderstandings. Ashley, are you even normal? Quite. Did you buy yourself groceries for dinner? Derek stayed silent. After work, he really had stopped at the supermarket, but stood there confused. Not knowing what to get, he ended up buying the simplest things: a package of frozen dumplings, bread, butter, cheap bologna, mayonnaise. Spent about all of it now sat on the bottom shelf of the fridge, pathetic and lonely. I took shrimp from the freezer, set them out to thaw. While they defrosted, I chopped avocado, cherry tomatoes, lettuce, added arugula, sautéed the shrimp in olive oil with garlic and lemon juice. Arranged them on the lettuce, added avocado and tomatoes on top. Drizzled with a sauce of olive oil, lemon juice, and mustard. Sprinkled with grated Parmesan. Poured myself a glass of white wine. Put the salad on a tray. Turned on music in my headphones, sat at the table and started eating dinner, enjoying every bite. Derek stood at the stove, boiling his dumplings. Tossed them in boiling water, stirred, stood grimly staring at the bubbling pot. 10 minutes later he fished out the dumplings with a slotted spoon. They'd turned into a mushy mass, stuck together. He'd overcooked them. Dumped this mush on a plate, poured mayonnaise over it, grabbed a fork, sat in the living room in front of the TV, ate silently, choking on the rubbery lumps of dough. I finished my salad, washed my dishes, left his dirty pot, slotted spoon, and plate in the sink. Went to the living room with a book, settled in the armchair. Derek looked at me, then at his empty plate, then at the sink with dirty dishes. Stood, went to wash them, banged around for 15 minutes, cursing under his breath. Returned and flopped on the couch, burying his face in his phone. They went to bed late, each on their side of the bed, turned away from each other. Friday began with the same scenario. I made myself breakfast: oatmeal with berries and nuts, fresh squeezed juice, coffee. Derek came out to the kitchen, looked at my plate, then in the fridge, his groceries: bread, butter, bologna, sat on the bottom shelf. He spread butter on bread, put bologna on top, sat chewing a dry sandwich, washing it down with water. I finished, washed my dishes, left for work. Derek stayed finishing his water, staring at her empty chair. At work that day, I had my annual review, yearly employee performance evaluation. Victor called me into his office. We spent half an hour discussing results. The outcome was excellent. I received the highest rating and an additional bonus of $3,000. I left the office satisfied. $3,000 was a good amount. I'd transfer it to my new savings account. At lunch, I went to a restaurant with my colleague Marina. I ordered a marbled beef steak with grilled vegetables. Marina got seafood pasta. We ate, talked about work, about weekend plans. How are things at home? Marina asked. Interesting. I smirked. In what sense? Derek suggested we switch to separate finances. I agreed. Marina choked on her pasta, started coughing. What? Separate finances? Yep. Since yesterday, each person for themselves. And how's it going? Wonderful. I only cook for myself, only buy my own groceries. He does too. Let's see how long he lasts. Marina laughed. You're cruel. I like it. How's he doing? Second day. Yesterday he lived on overcooked dumplings. This morning he ate a dry sandwich with cheap bologna. And you? I'm eating shrimp, avocado, red fish, expensive cheeses, everything I didn't buy before because he doesn't eat it. Smart woman, let him feel what it's like. They finished, drank coffee. I paid for myself, $93. Normal. Before I rarely allowed myself expensive restaurants. I'd economize. Now there was nothing to economize on. All my money went only to me. That evening, I stopped at the supermarket again, bought fresh oysters. I'd always wanted to try making them at home. Also got expensive French baguette, camembert, figs, honey. Spent. At home, Derek sat on the couch, hungry and angry. He'd had lunch at the company cafeteria, ate a cutlet with pasta for $18. Tasteless, greasy, heavy. After lunch, his stomach hurt. I went to the kitchen with bags. Derek watched me go, but didn't move. I started making dinner for myself. Opened oysters with a special knife I'd also bought. Arranged them on a platter with ice. Drizzled with lemon juice. Sliced the baguette. Lightly toasted it in the oven. Put camembert on a plate. With figs and honey alongside. Poured myself a glass of white wine. Settled at the kitchen table. Turned on light music. Tried an oyster. Delicate. With the taste of the ocean. Washed it down with wine. Perfect. Derek came out to the kitchen. Saw the scene. Oysters on ice. Cheese. Wine in a glass. And he stood there hungry. In his fridge only bread and bologna that he already hated. Ashley. She looked up from her plate. Yes? Maybe we should stop this. Stop what? Well, this whole separate finances thing. Let's go back to how it was. Derek, it's been 2 days. You're the one who suggested this. You said it was modern and right. I didn't think you'd take it so literally. How else should I take it? You said separate finances. I agreed. Now we have separate finances. Each person for themselves. But I didn't mean it like this. Then what did you mean? Derek opened his mouth. Closed it. Couldn't find an answer. Turned and left the kitchen. I finished my wine. Ate the oysters. Washed my dishes. Went to the living room. Turned on a series. Derek sat on the couch. Grim. Hungry. Then he stood. Went to the kitchen. I heard him fumbling around there. Frying something. It smelled burnt. 20 minutes later he returned with a plate of scrambled eggs that looked more like charcoal. Sat eating. Grimacing. Saturday, the day I usually woke early, and started preparing for the relative's arrival. But today, I woke at 10, lay in bed with my phone, scrolled through social media. Wasn't in a hurry to go anywhere. Derek also woke late, around 11. Came out to the living room. Stretched. Yawned. Suddenly remembered. Ashley, my parents are coming today. I was lying on the couch with a book. Yeah, I remember. So you'll be cooking? No. Derek froze in the middle of the room. What do you mean no? Separate finances. I don't cook for guests. Your parents, your responsibility. If you want to feed them, cook yourself, or order food delivery. Ashley, you can't do this. Why can't I? They're your family. Before we had joint finances and I spent joint money feeding them. Now finances are separate. So, if you want to feed your relatives, spend your own money. But you always cooked. Keyword, Before, now the rules are different. Your rules, by the way? Derek grabbed his phone, ran out to the balcony. I heard snatches of conversation. He was calling his mother, trying to cancel the visit, or at least postpone it. But Barbara was adamant. They'd already left. They'd be here in an hour. He came back from the balcony, pale. They're already on their way. What do I do? I told you. Cook or order. Ashley, please help. At least with advice. I don't know how to cook for that many people. The internet is full of recipes. Or order prepared food from a restaurant. They deliver in an hour. That's expensive. Cooking yourself is cheaper. Choose. Derek paced the apartment for a minute, then grabbed his jacket and ran out the door. I heard the front door slam, then his car engine started. I calmly continued reading my book. 40 minutes later, Derek returned with huge bags, burst into the kitchen, started frantically emptying contents onto the table. Pre-made salads in plastic containers from the supermarket, frozen pizzas, 3 of them, breaded frozen chicken wings, frozen potato wedges too, packaged sushi rolls, cake slices. He turned the oven to full heat, started shoving everything in. Pizza on one tray, wings on another, potatoes on a third, all at once. I came into the kitchen for water, looked at this chaos, smirked, left. Derek spun like a top, opening and closing the oven. Something was burning, something stayed raw. At exactly 1 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened it. Barbara stood on the threshold, with empty containers in her bag. Tyler, Amanda, and 3 kids. My mother-in-law entered. Sniffed. Smells strange. What did you cook, Ashley? I didn't cook anything. Hello? Come in. Barbara looked at her daughter-in-law uncomprehendingly. Walked into the living room, saw me sitting back on the couch with my book. You're reading on Saturday when guests arrived? Yes, reading. Interesting book. Come in. Sit down. The relatives entered the living room, sat on the couch. The kids immediately ran to the room with toys. Tyler and Amanda exchanged glances. Usually by their arrival the table was already set. Now the living room was empty. Derek burst from the kitchen, red and sweaty. Coming? Coming. Everything's ready. I'm setting the table. He started bringing out plates of food. Salads in store-bought containers. He hadn't even transferred them to normal dishes. Pizza half burned, half raw. Wings, some charred, others still frozen inside. Potatoes stuck together in one lump. Sushi fallen apart, rice everywhere. He set all this on the table. Barbara stared at this picture with horror. Son, you made this? Well, yeah. Bought and reheated it. What about Ashley? The mother-in-law turned to her daughter-in-law. Why? I looked up from my book, met my mother-in-law's eyes calmly. Separate finances. Remember, you told me 3 weeks ago how convenient it is. Derek listened to your advice. Now we each are responsible for ourselves. I cook with my money for myself. If Derek wants to feed guests, he cooks with his money. But we're family. You're Derek's family, and he can spend as much as he wants on you. His money, I don't mind. But my money is mine. Barbara's mouth fell open, but no words came. Tyler chuckled. Amanda bit her lip to keep from smiling. Lunch began in heavy silence. Everyone sat at the table reluctantly. The salads turned out tasteless. Store-bought, bland, with questionable quality mayonnaise. Pizza bitter from burning. Wings rubbery, potatoes stuck together and cold inside. Sushi fallen apart, inconvenient to eat. The kids refused to eat it. The youngest girl started crying. She wanted normal food, like usual. Amanda tried to calm her, but the child wailed at full volume. Barbara sat with a stone face, barely touching the food. Tyler chewed silently, grimacing. Amanda only drank water. 20 minutes later, everyone stopped, even pretending to eat. They just sat in oppressive silence. Usually after lunch there was dessert, tea, long conversations. Today everyone was silent. Barbara finally couldn't take it. Derek, explain to me what's going on. Derek fidgeted, shifted from foot to foot. Mom, well, Ashley and I decided to switch to separate finances, each person responsible for themselves. Why? It's modern. Right. You said so yourself. The mother-in-law turned red. I didn't mean it like this. Then what did you mean? I interjected, closing my book. I stood, walked to the table, sat in an empty chair. Barbara, 3 weeks ago you told me about separate finances. Said it was convenient, modern. Right? Derek listened. Now we have separate finances. What's the problem? The problem is, you're mocking us. Starving your husband, refusing to cook for family. I'm not starving anyone. Derek's a grown man. He can cook for himself or order food or buy prepared meals. He has money and options. But you're his wife. You have responsibilities. A wife's responsibilities don't include free feeding of her husband's relatives every Saturday. I work, earn money, pay my share of expenses. Derek does too. We're equal. Or do you think we're not equal? Barbara's face went purple. You've always been so heartless. No, before I gladly cooked for you because I thought we were one family. But since you suggested separate finances, that means we're not one family. That means each person for themselves. Tyler suddenly laughed. Short, bitter. You know, Derek. She's right. Tyler, his mother protested. Mom, stop it. Ashley's absolutely right. We really got used to coming here and gorging ourselves for free on her money and her labor, and she spent tons of time and money on us, and we even packed containers to last the week. We had no conscience at all. Amanda nodded quietly. Tyler's right. I always felt awkward when we took so much food. But you, Barbara, said, that's how it's done. That Ashley doesn't mind. I really didn't mind. I said, while we had joint finances, now finances are separate, the rules have changed. Barbara was silent, lips pressed tight. Then she abruptly stood, grabbed her bag. We're leaving. Tyler, let's go. Tyler and Amanda also stood, gathered the kids, got dressed. At the door, Tyler turned to his brother. Derek, think hard. Ashley's not at fault. You started this separate finances nonsense. The door closed. Derek stood in the middle of the living room, looked at the table with remains of the pathetic lunch, at the dirty dishes, at the closed door, then he looked at me. I returned to the couch, opened my book at the bookmark, continued reading. Ashley. Yes? Maybe, really enough? Let's bring everything back to how it was. Derek, it's been 3 days. 3 days of the separate finances you yourself suggested. You're already giving up? I'm not giving up. I just realized it's wrong. What exactly is wrong? All this separate food, separate cooking. We're family. We should be together. Then why did you suggest separate finances? Derek was silent. You listened to your coworker Marcus, who told you how his ex-wife cleaned him out in the divorce. You listened to your mother, who planted the idea about separate finances. And you decided I was using you, that I was spending your money left and right. Am I right? Not exactly like that. Exactly like that. You thought separate finances would give you control. You'd know I'm only spending my money, you're spending yours, and everyone's happy, but you didn't think that separate finances means separate life. Each person for themselves in everything. Derek sat on the couch, buried his face in his hands. I'm an idiot. Yes, an idiot. But it's fixable. He looked up, hope in his eyes. You'll forgive me? Too early to talk about forgiveness. First you need to understand what you've done. I stood, went to the kitchen, returned with my laptop, sat next to Derek, opened the expense spreadsheet. Look, here are our expenses for the past year. Everything by category, with receipts and documentation. Derek looked at the numbers, his eyes growing wider. Saturday dinners for your relatives. $216,200 per year. That's just the cost of groceries. My time, electricity, water not counted. I didn't know. Regular groceries for the two of us? $16,800 per year. Utilities? $5,580. Split should be $2,790 each. Household supplies? $3,300. Clothing for me? $5,000. Gifts for relatives on both sides. I showed categories one by one. Derek grew paler with each one. So, from my monthly salary of $6,500, nearly everything goes to family expenses. About $550.80 remains for personal needs. Ashley? I didn't. And you contribute about $2,200 to the family budget out of your $4,200. The other $2,000 you spend on yourself. On gadgets. On friends. On helping your mother. Where's the fairness in that? Derek was silent. I closed the laptop. That's why I agreed to separate finances. So you could see how much I actually invest in our family, and how much I get in return. Comments that the pasta's too wide. She stood, put the laptop on the table. When you truly understand this, then we'll talk about forgiveness. I went to the bedroom, closed the door. Derek sat on the couch, staring into space. His head was splitting from thoughts. He really hadn't known, hadn't counted, hadn't thought. He'd taken it for granted that Ashley cooked, cleaned, cared. He thought it was normal. That's how it should be. Turned out he was just using her, not paying for everything she did, living in comfort at her expense, and he even had the audacity to think he was supporting her. That evening he tried to make dinner. Boiled pasta, opened a can of stew, mixed them. It turned out inedible. He ate it, choking on each lump. I came out of the bedroom, made myself a steak with vegetables. Ate in the kitchen. He ate in the living room. They didn't talk. Sunday passed in heavy silence. Derek tried to clean the apartment, but didn't know where to start. Vacuumed the living room. His strength ran out there. Tried to do laundry, mixed up settings, clothes shrank. I did my own things, worked on my laptop, read, watched a series, ignored my husband. That evening his mother called. He went out to the balcony. The conversation was long and difficult. Barbara demanded, accused, pressured. Derek tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. When he came back from the balcony, his face was gray. I looked at him, but said nothing. They went to bed on their respective sides. Derek didn't sleep all night, tossed, thought. I slept peacefully. My conscience was clear. Monday, new work week. Derek left for work early without breakfast. Couldn't cook, and buying food at cafes every day was expensive. I had oatmeal with berries, finished my coffee, drove to the office. The workday was busy. Problems with the Chinese supplier again. Documents incorrectly filed or something else. I spent 3 hours sorting it out. Calling, writing, coordinating. By lunch, everything was resolved. That evening Derek came home late. I'd already eaten, made myself pasta with seafood. He went to the kitchen, opened the fridge. His groceries, remains of bread and bologna, sat on the bottom shelf. Nothing else. He'd forgotten to shop. He took out bread, bit off a piece, chewed the dry dough, washing it down with water. I sat in the living room watching a movie. Didn't even turn around. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday passed the same way. Derek ate random food. In the cafeteria at work, or bought something on the way home, or just gnawed bread. He spent over $650 on food that week. His clothes were all wrinkled because he didn't know how to iron. The apartment was a mess because he didn't know how to clean properly. Dishes piled up in the sink. He washed them half-heartedly, and I lived my life. Cooked delicious food for myself, went to work, met with friends. Everything was good for me. Even great. Friday evening Derek couldn't take it anymore. He came home, saw me in the kitchen. I was making duck with oranges. The smell was mind-blowing. He sat at the table, watched me work magic at the stove, then quietly asked, "Ashley, can I talk to you?" She turned around. "I'm listening. Forgive me, please." I understand now. I understand I was wrong. I was selfish. I didn't appreciate you. Continue. I want to bring everything back to how it was. Joint budget, normal life without this separate nightmare. I turned off the stove, wiped my hands with a towel, sat across from Derek. Fine, but with conditions. Anything. I continue keeping track of all expenses. You can look at any time where money's going. Full transparency. Agreed. Saturday dinners for your relatives twice a month. Not every week, and we discuss it in advance. Agreed. No more food to go in containers. We cook to eat here, not take home. Agreed. You don't listen to advice from people like Marcus about our family anymore. If we have problems, we discuss them together, not go to outsiders. I promise. I paused, looking at him. And the last thing, you understand I'm not a dependent, you're supporting, I'm a partner, an equal partner. I invest in our family, no less. Actually, more than you. I understand. I honestly understand. Then fine, we're going back to joint budget. Derek jumped up, wanted to hug me. I stopped him with a gesture. Wait, I forgave you, but I won't forget. What you said then, that you were tired of supporting me, that will stay in me for Ashley. I didn't mean, I know, but the words are already said. And now I'll always remember that, in a critical moment, you didn't support me, you accused me, that changed something between us forever. She stood, returned to the stove, continued making dinner, but now not just for herself, for both of them. Derek sat at the table and understood that something had broken in their relationship. Something important. And he'd broken it himself. A week passed after that conversation in the kitchen, when Derek asked to return to joint budget. They did go back. The life outwardly normalized. But inside Ashley, something remained broken. She forgave him. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean trusting again. They continued living together, sleeping in one bed, eating at one table. They looked like a normal couple. But inside, everything was different. Derek hoped that over time everything would return. That Ashley would again look at him with loving eyes. That the closeness they had before would come back. But Ashley knew that would never happen. She'd forgiven. But she'd never forget. Because some wounds don't heal. They scab over, stop hurting. But the scars remain forever. And every time she looked at Derek, she saw that scar. Remembered those words. That betrayal. And she kept emotional distance. Because she couldn't fully trust him anymore. And without trust, there's no real closeness. Months passed. Then a year. They were still together. Living calmly, without fights. Derek kept trying. Ashley kept her distance. The savings account grew. $27,000. $33,000. One day Derek asked, Ashley, will you ever truly forgive me? She looked at him. I forgave you that same day. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean trusting again. So you don't trust me? Not like before. No. Can I get that trust back? I don't know, probably not. Then why are we together? I thought about it. Out of a habit, probably. Convenience. Because divorce is complicated. You don't love me anymore? I do. But not like before. Less. More coldly. Derek lowered his head. I ruined everything. Yes. And it can't be fixed? Probably not. They fell silent. Sat next to each other, but each in their own world. Derek understood he'd lost her forever. Even if she was physically here beside him, emotionally she was already gone. And that was the price of his mistake. The price of the distrust he'd shown. The price of words that can't be taken back. He got forgiveness, but he lost love. And that loss was irreplaceable. Ashley continued living, working, cooking, caring for the home. Outwardly nothing changed. But inside she was already free. Emotionally free from this marriage. She stayed out of pity, out of habit, from unwillingness to cause pain. But there was no more love. And someday she'd find the strength to leave. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Because living without love is impossible. And Ashley wasn't one of those women who endure. She never was. And never would be. Every story carries within it an echo of our shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone special. Leave us a comment about what you felt, and subscribe to join us for more soul-reaching stories. Because every life tells a story that deserves to be heard. See you next time.